Practically from its first episode on OETA, Outdoor Oklahoma birthed a culture of loyal viewers that now spans 40 years. In the mid-50s, the Wildlife Department produced a few 15-minute episodes called Outdoor Oklahoma on 16mm black and white film. These were hand-delivered to television stations in Oklahoma City and Tulsa and broadcast live while being narrated by someone from the department. Some of these short programs were re-recorded to broadcast multiple times, and several were even distributed to schools throughout the state. Then in 1976, the Wildlife Department entered into a historic cooperative agreement with the Oklahoma Educational Television Authority to air a regularly scheduled half-hour show every week. And today, 40 years later, Outdoor Oklahoma is one of the longest continuously run programs in our state's history. And from that very first episode on OETA, a precedence was set for quality outdoor programming on television. Although many things have changed since that first show in '76, our mission hasn't, and that's to showcase our state's limitless outdoor opportunities and inspire you to experience it for yourself. Today, we celebrate this relationship with OETA and catch up with several of those that you've welcomed into your home over these last 4 decades. David Warren, Laura Pollard, Neil Kies, Paul Moore, Rich Fuller, and myself, Todd Craighead, have been proud to be a part of your living room since 1976. Well, hello and welcome to Outdoor Oklahoma. I'm Todd Craighead, and it's hard to believe that sitting here at the table together, we've got 125 years of experience producing Outdoor Oklahoma and bringing it to you every week. This is a landmark episode for us today. We're celebrating our 40th anniversary. Can you imagine 40 years? We are back in the OETA studio where it all began. And what kind of memories does this bring back for everybody?
A lot of work.
Yeah, a lot of work.
A lot of hours.
Sure. But it's fun to think that we had our set right back there in that corner and spent a lot of time here.
That's right. We actually produced the show out here every Wednesday morning. And of course, in those earlier years, we were producing, 52 shows a year almost, or 50 or so. And so that gave us a pretty tight schedule. We had to have that show ready and edited Wednesday morning, and then we had to spend Thursday and Friday filming next week's show, and then Monday and Tuesday was editing like crazy, sometimes into the wee hours to get it done.
It didn't make our spouses real happy.
Yeah.
At times.
Before we got to that point when we had a full-time working relationship with OETA, the Wildlife Department dabbled in 15-minute productions, and I think, Neil, that you were involved in some of those sometimes.
When I joined the department in '67, I did a TV show with Channel 9 before I got associated with OETA, and those were 30-minute shows. And we had our director, Wendell Beaver, he co-hosted with the director at Channel 9. But I think that was a 13-week series, but from that, I think OETA kind of saw the production, the work and everything. The actual show started, I think, in, what was it, Dave?
Well, it did have kind of a evolving start, but it really got to go on that weekly schedule about probably 76.
Oklahoma Outdoors, to help you enjoy and better understand our outdoor world. Your hosts from the Oklahoma Department of Wildlife Conservation, David Warren and Laura Smith.
Hello, it's nice to have you with us again here on Oklahoma Outdoors. Well, as you can see, we have Laura back with us this week after a trip out of state. You want to tell us about it?
That's right, David. I went to Pennsylvania and went to a conservation education
But I think a number of us learned on the job, because I was a wildlife biology major at OSU, but certainly had not done any film making of any sort.
And the big challenge was, the magazine Outdoor Oklahoma was one thing we grew up with, a lot of us, and we wanted the show to be close to the quality of the magazine. And I think that drove all of us to be a lot more professional. And we did have to learn on the job because a lot of us were wildlife people to begin with.
Were there any lessons you learned the hard way?
Most of them.
All of them?
Too many to count. I think the lesson I learned was, and Will Rogers said it best, if you don't like the weather in Oklahoma, wait a while. You cannot predict the Oklahoma weather. There was many times where we would watch the weather and, it looks like it's going to be perfect. And, of course, get out there and it would fool all the meteorologists and people that studied weather a lot more than we did. But no, we got stung by the weather. And then conversely, we'd have some shoots that, turned off to be pretty nice. So it all kind of evened out. But
I learned that you had to always have a backup because you get out there, you're going to produce a fishing show. And like you say, if the weather turns bad or if the fish don't bite, what are you going to have for a show? So that was a lot of pressure from week to week to always come up with something.
Neil, you've mentioned some pretty good tips on fishing streams. You've also brought some lures to show us, and we have not very much time, but we might like to see if you have them.
You bet. Well, of course, probably the best fisherman, at least on this particular float, was Joe Hemphill. He seemed to be catching the most. And he was using this little crankbait, crawdad color. Yeah.
What was that learning curve like in those beginning years when each of you started?
Todd, I can remember when I first started with the department, we actually did cut and paste with film. We used 16 millimeter film and we'd shoot it and get it processed and come back. And I can remember Neil, he talked about the wee hours of the night, and didn't matter what time it was, Neil always stayed till the job got done. But he'd be sitting there with his reels going back and forth and cutting and pasting. And it progressed from there to beginning videotape. And finally, it got to where we were sitting at our desk editing on our computers.
Did you ever think that you'd run out of material? There's only so much to do in Oklahoma. Was that ever an issue?
I don't really remember that. I remember the staff meetings where we'd sit around and brainstorm, and it was always fun. It was creative, but I don't remember ever, maybe they were lengthy sometimes coming up with something, but it seems like that was never a concern.
Probably one of the challenges was how many different ways can you film a Bob White hunt?
right. Yeah.
And I think part of that goes back to who you use as your talent, as we call it, or your guests. They really make the show in many regards. Doesn't matter what you're doing. If you have the right people on with you, then it's going to be a success.
And Todd, you talk about pressure. There was pressure on us, but we could always get by with some talking heads or something, to get by. But the guests that we used, the guys and the gals that went out to produce for us, catch fish, you talk about some people sweating. They really took it seriously, and of course that made us try to do that much better job. So it was quite a bit of fun.
Dave, you mentioned the pressure a lot of times was on the people that we were out filming and shooting with. And there was, how many times did you hear you should have been here yesterday?
Oh, yeah.
We caught 37, we limited out on crappie, and 45 minutes and you get there and it's all day and you're going, come on, come on, come on. And you felt for the people. I mean, we'd seen it enough to where we knew that, you know, if it was that easy, it wouldn't be called hunting or fishing or whatever. It'd be something else.
When we talk about some of those guests that we've had on the show and the talent that we've used, are there some memorable ones that come to mind? Some favorites that you worked with?
Some we can't talk about.
Yeah, those that you can talk about, though.
In fact, a good source was our own staff, you know, the game rangers, or wardens as they're called now. They were a prime source for different types of shows, and they always knew where the good hunting and fishing was in their country. And the biologists that managed our wildlife management areas, that was another great source.
It's a really good plant. It's an emergent type plant that'll grow out to about 4 feet deep in the water.
You know, the southeast area of our state is home to some of the largest tracts of public land to be found in the southern United States.
These are certified disease-free elk, and they've been tested and certified as such by the Oklahoma Department of Agriculture veterinarian.
Spear guns used by scuba divers are legal for taking non-game fish. That includes the flathead, which is a primary target and provides some great opportunities for divers.
I can remember one show where when we first went to the videotape, we had it wasn't just a camera with everything built into it. We had a recorder that you had to carry around, and the recorder was yay big, and it probably weighed 20, 25 pounds. And then you had an umbilical cord that went to the camera. And so Neil was shooting the video, the camera, and I was lugging around, being his pack mule, carrying the recorder, and we were doing a gray squirrel hunt in eastern Oklahoma. And you think of the mountains of eastern Oklahoma and you think, oh, those are real pretty and lovely. Well, when you're trying to keep up with someone carrying this thing, you have to watch the person out of the corner of your eye with the camera, then you have to look at the ground to make sure you're not going to trip. We tripped and fell, and we broke that cord, I remember, Dave, several times. All of us did.
Yeah, our equipment took a punishment, rain and snow and blood and gore, and somehow we still managed to get the shows produced.
I'm ready.
I think we better get to the trucks
before
the skies open up and get us all wet all over, besides just from our knees down.
There he goes.
Good thing the water's clear. You can kind of see some of these rocks out here.
I know it. Oh, that's good.
You know, you can kind of see it. Yeah.
We better get off in a hurry.
It's the advantage of being the short guy right now. There's definitely an advantage of being the short guy.
Rod, it's a little bit longer.
Yeah. 3 days away from Christmas, snow flying. We could have a white Christmas.
You know, you mentioned OETA, and that's always been, you know, an integral part of who we are. Outdoor Oklahoma wouldn't be who we are today, and certainly wouldn't have that 40-year history without that relationship. How important was that in those beginning years, and what did those conversations sound like?
Did you get in on those early talks with them?
Sure, early on, and our mission was the same as the department's. You know, try to inform and educate and help people understand what good wildlife conservation was. And I think we really, all of us, did feel committed to the cause, and everybody worked extra hard to make good things happen. And one of the big challenges back then was getting people convinced that it was time that we could start shooting some does. And that was just one subject, but we had several that we'd hit on a lot, and we tried to coordinate it with obviously with the department's mission.
Outdoor Oklahoma, to help you enjoy and better understand your outdoor world.
I worked for the department during those 60s and 70s, and you travel out different parts of the state. The public, when you mentioned the Oklahoma Department of Wildlife Conservation, they immediately would think of the local game ranger, or wardens as they're now called, and that was sort of their source of information of what was going on and what the department represented. But once OETA gave us the opportunity to release this show statewide, we were able to give the whole public information about what we represented and what we stood for.
First thing that usually happens every year in March is our walleye trap netting operation out at Lake Canton. Walleye are the earliest spawners in the state, and in order to stock other lakes in the state, we rely on the Canton walleye population to supply the fish that are needed. Here the boys are marking a few fish and returning the ones that we don't need. Of course, we keep the female walleye using the eggs from the female.
You do some similar things with other species later in the year?
Later on, we get into our striped bass and our striped bass hybrid production. It's a similar technique, however, we collect fish in other lakes for that purpose. But mostly early spring, this time of year, is when fish are spawning and when we're providing fish for other lakes in the state.
Now, in 1998, some of you were here, some of you weren't, but we transitioned away from being in the studio here and having a set to a full in-the-field production. And I know, Rich, you and I worked through that transition.
It was some growing pains.
That was a big deal.
It was a big deal.
Tell me about how that affected how we operate.
You know, we there for a while thought the sky was falling, and of course it didn't. But it was a change that was necessitated because of space concerns here at the OETA studios and so forth. And really, it was something that we had somewhat given them the idea even previous to that, because we called them canned shows. Mm-hmm. A show that was completely produced by us out in the field, and from start to finish, 30 minutes, and give them the finished product, no studio set time. So we had done that on occasion, and so that precedent was somewhat set. But now it was, you guys need to do this full time, and it was some growing pains.
Hello everybody, I'm Paul Moore. I've got bugs flying up my nose.
Look at that thing on the lens.
Wow, that is weird.
That's bad. That's right in the element itself.
No.
Look, you can see that thing right there.
Outdoor report.
Overall, it was one of those things that probably 3 or 4, maybe 5 years after that, it was kind of like, gee whiz, it wasn't as bad as what we thought.
What do you got there, Paul?
We're looking at some of the new products that you can find at the Oklahoma Bow Hunting Council's annual conference. This is a knife that has a little flashlight in it, so you can find your coffee cup up in your tree stand, Rich.
Or you could maybe even clean a turkey after dark or something like that.
Thanks for joining us, everybody. As we said.
Hello and welcome to Outdoor Oklahoma. I'm Todd Craighead. Boy, this brings back a lot of memories for me. You have any idea how long it's been since I've roamed the halls of a middle school? No smart aleck comments, please.
Man, that was awesome.
Oh, golly.
Wasn't that school of bass cool?
That was really amazing, really amazing.
I couldn't believe we saw a whole bunch of school of 5-inch bass.
5-inch
down
bass.
there and perch and stuff.
That was great.
That was awesome.
Hello, everybody. We're down here at Lake Elmer Thomas near Fort Sill. That's the exploding you hear every once in a while.
Where's my popcorn?
Did you bring the popcorn with you?
I really should. Are there not popcorn fish in this lake?
Well, no? if it worked, we'd try it.
This is too early to watch a movie, so we're going to make a movie.
There you go. That's right. We're going to make our own version of Old Man in the Sea.
Oh, really?
I won't get into who's the old man is.
Thank you very much. Hey, this is great. I'm looking forward to this great day.
Well, of course, you're the host of Movie Club, and appreciate you coming on. We're going to be talking about that and a bunch of other great things about OETA today, but let's go fishing. You want to?
I'd love to. We've got a great guide.
We got him.
When I look back on my career with the department, it's not any one particular show. It's the meeting all the sportsmen all around the state, finding out about the different ways that people enjoy the outdoors. We got to see some amazing sunrises and sunsets in our career, and a lot of people miss that. And some of the time you were bundled up so cold you didn't think you'd live. You were standing in waders with water up to here, looking into a duck blind. But Other times it was pretty amazing, pretty amazing.
You know, I look at you all sitting at this table, and like I said, we have 125 years that we added up of working on this show together. And you may not consider it, but I consider you all pioneers in the industry that really were setting a new precedence in outdoor programming. There really weren't too many other competitors in those early years. In Oklahoma, we had Don Wallace. Was there anybody else? I mean, we were breaking new ground, weren't we?
Well, there was the real professional shows like Nova and those other shows that we were competing with on Channel 13, but and that helped us, I think, because we could see those shows where they had, you know, large production situations, and so that gave us a goal to try to achieve in our shows.
Well, this might address that somewhat, but what would you attribute to the longevity of Outdoor Oklahoma? 40 years on OETA. It's a long time.
Todd, I think it's really attributed to, of course, OETA, which we've recognized many times and need to in the future as well. But we're the wildlife department, and we've got a whole agency that stands behind us that's allowed us to do what we've done and been supportive with, you know, hiring good people, getting good equipment, having people available that we can bring on the show, like game wardens and biologists and other folks that work for our agency that have information that nobody else really has. And I think as a sportsman out there, and I've been told this many times, and probably you have too, Laura, all of us, and that is people tune in to our show because they want to hear how this year's quail crop is going to look from the biologist, you know, the person that really does know. I think that's the real unique part about it, and what's been pretty much responsible for our longevity. Hopefully another 40 years.
And showcasing local talent too.
Oh, yeah.
In the diverse state that we live in, with all the different wildlife species and the different people with all the hobbies.
Absolutely.
The whole show is shot and produced here in Oklahoma, and that's what people want to see.
I thank you for being here today. We've had a great time, lots of stories. You know, and the best part about my job, and I'm sure you would have said the same thing, is that I call each of you a friend. And I really mean that. And we really appreciate the efforts and the support that you've had throughout the years for us.
Well, I appreciate you continuing the tradition and doing such an excellent job of hosting the show.
Amen.
Right.
All right. Well, here's to another 40 years of Outdoor Oklahoma.
Cheers.
One of the things about Outdoor Oklahoma and OETA, it's Oklahoma. And I think that's really what's key when you start thinking about what it means to the people that watch OETA and watch Outdoor Oklahoma on OETA. Really, when it comes to local programming, there's really no other program like Outdoor Oklahoma that has that appeal, I think, to our audiences. So congratulations to Outdoor Oklahoma. And we just really cherish our partnership with you, and we wish you all well and continue to hope that we'll continue in our partnership for many years yet to come.
Be with us at this same time next week when your State Game and Fish Department again brings you Outdoor Oklahoma.